I, 28F, stood near the dance floor watching my sister Ava float in her wedding dress. She was radiant, exactly as a bride should be. My husband, Liam, stood beside me, his hand resting on the small of my back. We had only been married for 3 months ourselves, and the joy of being a newlywed was still fresh. I wanted this same joy for my sister. I truly did. But a familiar knot was tightening in my stomach. It always did at family events. The reason for that knot was making her way toward us through the crowd of celebrating guests. My mother, Eleanor. She carried a perfectly wrapped gift, a rectangular box in shimmering silver paper with an elaborate white bow. Her smile was wide and bright, but it never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. For everyone else, she was the picture of the proud, loving mother of the bride. For me, she was a constant reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Second place. Always. "There you are," she said, her voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. She ignored me completely and presented the gift to Liam. "Liam, darling, I have something for you." Liam, ever polite, smiled warmly. "Eleanor, you shouldn't have. This is Ava's day." "Nonsense," my mother said, pressing the box into his hands. "This is for the son I'm getting. A proper welcome to the family." The words hit me just as she intended. A small, sharp sting. Not a son-in-law, but a son. The implication was clear. She had one perfect daughter, Ava, and one daughter who was a perpetual project. Me. Now, she was getting the son she never had. Someone to balance out my perceived failings. I felt Liam's hand squeeze my back gently. He had heard it too. He was learning to decode my mother's unique language of backhanded compliments. I kept the smile on my face. I would not give her the satisfaction of a reaction, not at my sister's wedding. "Thank you, Eleanor," Liam said, his tone still gracious. "That's incredibly generous of you." "Only the best for my family," she said, finally glancing at me. Her eyes held a flicker of triumph. She had landed her little jab, and she knew it. She then turned her attention to a passing cousin, leaving the heavy gift in Liam's hands and the heavier silence between us. I took a deep breath. "Let's go put this in the car," I suggested. "It looks heavy." "Chloe," Liam said, his voice low and concerned. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I lied. "I'm just happy for Ava. Let's not let anything spoil that." I knew this was just the opening act. With my mother, there was always more to come. But I had no idea how much more was waiting for us, hidden inside that beautiful silver box. For the moment, I just wanted to get through the night. I wanted to dance with my husband, celebrate my sister, and pretend that my own mother didn't see me as a disappointment to be managed. We made our way to the coat check room, where we had left our own things. The music from the reception hall was a dull, thumping sound here. It felt like we were in a different world, a quiet pocket away from the forced smiles and social graces. Liam placed the gift on a small table. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said softly. What she said was not okay. I leaned against him, finally letting my shoulders sag. "I know, but it's just how she is. She's always seen me as some kind of project that went wrong. Ava is the masterpiece. I'm the flawed first draft." "That's not true," he said, wrapping his arms around me. "You're amazing. She's the one who is flawed if she can't see that." His words were a comfort, a small balm on a very old wound. "Thank you. Let's just open this later. I don't want to think about it right now." "Okay," he agreed. "Whatever you want." But my curiosity was a nagging thing. The box was heavy, solid. What kind of gift was meant to welcome a son into the family? We decided to open it quickly, just to see. Liam carefully peeled back the tape, making sure not to rip the expensive paper. My mother cared about appearances, and returning a gift with torn paper would be another mark against me. He lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a watch. It was not a new watch. It was a vintage piece with a worn leather strap and a gold case that gleamed under the dim lights of the coat room. It looked substantial. It looked expensive. Wow, Liam breathed. This is a lot. She's trying to make a statement, I said, my voice flat. The statement was about status, about the kind of family he was marrying into. A family of quality, of taste. A family he needed to live up to. Then I saw it. Tucked under the velvet flap where the watch rested was a small, cream-colored envelope. His name, Liam, was written on the front in my mother's perfect looping cursive. There's a card, I said, my stomach twisting again. The gift was the public display. The card was the private message. That was where the real venom would be. Liam picked it up. He hesitated, looking at me. Should we read it now? We might as well, I said. Better to know what we're dealing with. He opened the flap and pulled out the thick cardstock. He began to read it aloud, his voice steady at first, then faltering. Liam, he read, welcome to the family. I hope you can be a good influence on Chloe. He stopped and looked at me. I just nodded, my expression grim. Keep going. He took a breath and continued. She has always been a challenge, and I worry about her choices. This watch was originally meant for her future husband, but I was saving it for one who could truly provide for her and guide her. I have my doubts, but I am hopeful you are the one. Use this to remember the standard our family expects. Love, Eleanor. The air left my lungs in a rush. It was so much worse than I had imagined. A challenge. Guide her. My doubts. Each phrase was a carefully chosen dart, aimed directly at my worth, at my independence, at the very foundation of my marriage. She was telling my husband that his new wife was a broken thing that he needed to fix, a financial risk that he needed to manage. Liam slowly lowered the card. His face was pale with anger. I can't believe she would write this. Chloe, this is monstrous. This is my mother, I whispered. The hurt was so sharp it felt like a physical blow. I felt small, like a child being scolded for a crime I didn't understand. This was my punishment for not being Ava, for choosing my own career, for marrying a man my mother hadn't picked out for me. Liam put his arm around me, pulling me close. We are not keeping this. We're going to go out there right now and give it back to her. No, I said, my voice shaking. No, we can't. That's what she wants. She wants a scene. She wants to prove to everyone that I'm unstable, that I'm the dramatic one. We can't give her that satisfaction. So we just let her get away with this? He asked, his voice filled with disbelief. She insulted you. She insulted us. We will deal with it, I promised, though I had no idea how. Just not here. Not tonight. Let's put it back in the box and lock it in the car. Please, Liam. For Ava. He looked from the card to my face, and his anger softened into deep concern. He nodded. Okay. For Ava. As he placed the card back in the envelope, his fingers brushed against something else inside the box. Wait, he said. There's something else in here. He reached back into the box and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper that had been tucked deep underneath the velvet lining. It wasn't fancy cardstock. It was a flimsy receipt, folded into a tiny square. My blood ran cold. Why would she include the receipt? Was it another power move? A way to show Liam exactly how much value she was placing on him? Liam unfolded it. He stared at it for a long moment, his expression changing from anger to confusion, and then to utter shock. What is it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He held it out to me without a word. My hands trembled as I took it. It was a receipt from a high-end vintage jeweler in the city. I saw the name of the watch, its serial number, and then I saw the price. It was astronomical. Enough for a down payment on a small apartment. But that wasn't what made my heart stop. It was the payment method listed at the bottom. It wasn't a credit card. It wasn't a check from my mother's personal account. It was a direct debit from a joint savings account, an account I recognized instantly. It was the account my grandmother had set up for me before she died, the one my mother managed on my behalf. It was my inheritance. My mother hadn't just given Liam a gift. She had bought it with my own money. She had stolen from me to deliver an insult, to undermine my marriage and to position herself as the generous matriarch. The knot of dread in my stomach burst into a fire of pure, cold rage. The hurt was still there, but it was now fuel. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. This was theft. This was a betrayal so profound, it fundamentally changed everything. She used my money, I said, the words feeling foreign and ugly in my mouth. She stole my inheritance to buy this watch. Liam looked at me, his eyes wide with horror. Chloe, are you sure? Positive, I said, my voice hard as stone. This account was from my grandmother. It was meant for my future, for a house, for a family. She told me she was investing it wisely for me. The full weight of her deception crashed down on me. The years of little comments, the constant comparisons to Ava, the subtle manipulations, it all clicked into place. This was the ultimate act of control. She had taken my financial security, the one thing I had that was separate from her, and used it as a weapon against me. A decision formed in my mind, sharp and clear. I would not be the bigger person. I would not keep the peace. Not anymore. I was going to get my money back, and I was going to make sure she understood the consequences of what she had done. Okay, I said, my voice steady now. New plan. We're not going to say a word tonight. What? Liam asked, confused. Chloe, she stole from you. I know, I said, folding the receipt carefully and tucking it into my purse. And a public accusation without irrefutable proof will just make me look crazy. She will deny it. She will twist it. She will make me the villain. I've seen her do it 1,000 times. But this time will be different. This time, I'm going to be smarter than her. I looked at him, my eyes probably blazing with a fury he had never seen before. I'm going to get everything back, and she is never, ever going to have this kind of power over me again. He saw the resolve in my face. He nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? For now, we go back to the party, I said, taking his hand. We smile, we dance, we congratulate my sister, we act like nothing happened. We give her no reason to suspect that we know. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The shock had passed, and what remained was a chilling clarity. My mother had just handed me all the ammunition I would ever need. She thought she had put me in my place. She had no idea she had just shown me exactly how to burn her entire world to the ground. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. We walked back into the reception hall, the music and laughter washing over us. I saw my mother holding court, accepting compliments on her beautiful daughter's wedding. She looked so proud, so untouchable. I smiled. It was a real smile this time, because I knew a secret. I knew that her perfect world was built on a foundation of lies and theft, and I was the one holding the detonator. The party was just getting started. The rest of the wedding passed in a blur of forced pleasantries. I danced with my dad, who was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. He told me how proud he was of me and Liam. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. I hugged my sister, telling her how happy I was for her, and every word was true. My fight was not with Ava. She was as much a victim of our mother's manipulations as I was, just in a different way. She was the golden child, trapped in a gilded cage, forever needing to live up to an impossible standard. Liam was a rock. He stayed by my side, a silent, supportive presence. Whenever my mother's gaze drifted toward us, we were smiling, whispering to each other, looking every bit the happy newlywed couple. We were playing our parts perfectly. My mother seemed satisfied. She probably thought her little card had done its job, planting a seed of doubt and control in my marriage. She had no idea it had planted something else entirely, a seed of rebellion that was already taking root. The first opportunity to act came later that evening as the party was winding down. I saw my mother standing alone for a moment near the gift table, admiring the pile of presents. I knew I had to test the waters to see how she would react to a gentle probe. I walked over, my expression carefully neutral. "Mom," I said, "I just wanted to say thank you again for the gift for Liam. It's really beautiful." She turned to me, her smile thin and self-satisfied. "Well, of course, he's a wonderful young man. I wanted to give him something that reflects the quality he's bringing to this family." Another little dig, implying that I, of course, brought no such quality. "It must have been very expensive," I said, watching her face closely. She preened, just as I expected she would. "You can't put a price on family, Chloe, and it's important to start a marriage on the right footing, with the right standards." "Right," I said. "Speaking of finances, I was thinking about that old joint account, the one from Grandma. I think it's probably time I took it over completely, maybe move the funds to my own bank. It would just be easier to manage." Her smile tightened instantly. A flicker of something, panic maybe, crossed her eyes before she masked it with annoyance. "Oh, that old thing? Don't be silly, dear. I have it all under control. It's invested in very stable long-term bonds. You shouldn't be worrying your pretty little head about it." "It's no worry," I said, keeping my tone light. "I'm just trying to be more responsible with my own finances. Liam and I are saving for a house, you know." "And you will have one in due time," she said dismissively. "Let me handle the investments. You've never had a good head for numbers." She patted my arm in a gesture that was meant to look maternal but felt like a warning. "Now, go and enjoy the rest of your sister's wedding. Stop talking about boring old money." She turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding. It was all the confirmation I needed. She was defensive. She was dismissive. And she had lied, point blank. Long-term bonds. I had the receipt in my purse that proved otherwise. This wasn't just a one-time theft for the watch. Her reaction told me there was more. She was hiding something bigger. I went back to Liam and told him what she had said. "She's lying," I finished. I could see it in her eyes. She's terrified of me looking at that account. "So what's the next step?" he asked. "The next step," I said, "is we go home and I log into that bank account. And I find out exactly how deep this goes." The drive home from the wedding was silent. The joy of the day had been completely overshadowed by the dark cloud of my mother's betrayal. When we got back to our apartment, I didn't even bother to change out of my bridesmaid dress. I went straight to my laptop, my hands shaking slightly as I sat down at our small kitchen table. "I haven't logged into this account in years," I told Liam, who was standing behind me, a hand on my shoulder. "She always just sent me paper statements, and they looked fine. She must have faked them." "People who do this kind of thing are good at covering their tracks," he said grimly. I typed in the bank's website address and navigated to the login page. I still remembered the username and password. My mother had set them up for me when I was a teenager, telling me it was for emergency access only. I entered the credentials and clicked the login button. My breath caught in my throat as I waited for the page to load. The account summary appeared on the screen. I stared at the balance, my heart sinking into my stomach. It was low. Dangerously low. It was less than a tenth of what it should have been. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What is it?" Liam asked, leaning closer. "The money," I said, my voice trembling. "It's almost all gone." I clicked on the transaction history, my dread growing with every second. I scrolled back, past the recent massive withdrawal from the vintage jeweler. And then I saw it. A pattern. A steady bleeding of my inheritance over the past 3 years. There were hundreds of small withdrawals. $50 here. $100 there. Transfers to an account I didn't recognize, which I suspected was my mother's personal account. Payments to high-end department stores. Payments for spa days and expensive restaurants. It was a slow, methodical draining of my future to fund her present. She hadn't just stolen from me for the watch. She had been stealing from me for years. The paper statements she sent me were clever forgeries, showing a healthy, growing balance while the reality was a slow, systematic theft. The scope of her deceit was breathtaking. It was so much worse than a single impulsive act of cruelty. This was calculated. This was a long-term campaign of deception against her own daughter. She had been looking me in the eye at family dinners, telling me to save my money and be responsible, all while she was secretly spending my inheritance on herself. She took everything, I said, the words hollow. I scrolled through pages and pages of transactions, each one a tiny stab of betrayal. It wasn't just for the watch. It was for her whole life. Her clothes, her lunches, her everything. Liam wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my head. He was silent for a long time, just holding me as I stared at the screen, at the digital record of my mother's long con. "We have all the proof we need now," he said finally, his voice hard. "We can go to the police." I shook my head, though the idea was tempting. The thought of seeing her face handcuffs was satisfying. The police would be a public declaration of war. The family would be torn apart. Everyone would be forced to take sides. And you know who they'll protect? The perfect matriarch, not the difficult daughter. They'll say it was a misunderstanding. They'll pressure me to drop the charges to keep the peace. "So she gets away with it?" he asked, incredulous. "After all this?" "No," I said, a new kind of resolve hardening within me. "She doesn't get away with it. But I'm not going to use the police. I'm going to use something she values far more than her freedom, her reputation." I closed the laptop. The anger was still there, but it was now a cold, focused thing. I knew what I had to do. I needed more than just bank statements. I needed to understand the why. Why had she done this? The money was one thing, but the cruelty behind it was another. To understand that, I needed to talk to someone who was on the inside, but not under her spell. There were only two options: my father, her enabler, or her sister, my Aunt Carol, who had been estranged from my mother for years. I decided to start with my dad. I needed to know how much he knew. I needed to see if I had any ally in him at all. The next morning, I called him. I asked if he and my mom could come over for coffee. I told him I wanted to talk about something important in private. He sounded hesitant, but agreed. I knew my mother would be there, ready to control the narrative. This was my chance to confront them both, but on my turf. My apartment was my space, a place where I felt in control. Liam and I prepared for their arrival like we were preparing for a battle. I printed out the bank statements, highlighting the withdrawal for the watch and the dozens of other suspicious transactions. I placed them in a folder on the coffee table. Liam made coffee, his presence a quiet source of strength. We were a team. That thought gave me courage. When the doorbell rang, I took a deep breath and opened it. My mother and father stood there, my mother with a bright, false smile, my father looking uneasy. "Chloe, darling," my mother said, sweeping in as if she owned the place. "What's all this about? Such a serious phone call." "Please come in, sit down," I said, my voice more level than I felt. They sat on the couch. Liam sat in an armchair beside me. The folder of bank statements sat between us on the table, a silent bomb waiting to go off. "So," my mother began, looking around my small, tidy apartment with a faintly critical air. "What's the big emergency?" I looked her directly in the eye. I didn't want to start with an accusation. I wanted to give her one last chance to tell the truth, as unlikely as that was. "I have a question about my inheritance account," I said calmly. "The one you manage." My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. "We discussed this at the wedding, Chloe. It's all perfectly fine. You don't need to worry about it." "I am worried about it," I said, "because I logged into the account last night, and the balance is almost gone." The silence in the room was deafening. My mother's mask of pleasantness finally cracked. Her face hardened. You had no right to do that. That was private. It's my account, I said, my voice rising slightly. It's my money, or it was. I pushed the folder across the coffee table toward her. I want to know what this is. My father picked up the folder and opened it. He paled as he saw the highlighted transactions. My mother didn't even look at it. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with a rage that was terrifying to behold. How dare you, she hissed, after everything I've done for you. After I raised you, provided for you. You accuse me of what? I'm not accusing you of anything, I said, my voice steady again. I'm asking you to explain why thousands of dollars of my inheritance money were spent at jewelers, at department stores, at restaurants. I'm asking you to explain this. I pointed to the largest highlighted transaction. This withdrawal, for the exact price of the watch you gave to Liam, a gift you bought for my husband with my own money. My father looked from the papers to my mother, his expression pleading. Eleanor, just explain. It must be a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, she snapped, her voice sharp and brittle. I borrowed some of it. It was an investment. The watch is an heirloom, something that will appreciate in value. It's for the family. It's not an heirloom if you bought it 2 weeks ago, Liam interjected, his voice calm but firm. And it's not a family investment if it was bought with money stolen from your daughter. My mother's head whipped around to face him. You stay out of this. This is a family matter. I am family, Liam said. And Chloe is my wife. You stole from her, and you used that theft to try and manipulate me and insult her. We have the card you wrote. The mention of the card seemed to momentarily deflate her. She knew she was caught on that front. But she recovered quickly, turning her anger back to me. You are the most ungrateful child I have ever known, she spat. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? With baseless accusations and disrespect? These are not baseless, I said, tapping the bank statements. This is proof. Dad, did you know about this? I turned to my father, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. He wrung his hands, avoiding my eyes. Your mother, she mentioned she needed to borrow some funds for the wedding, for things. I thought she was going to pay it back. You knew? I asked, my voice breaking with a fresh wave of betrayal. You knew she was taking my money and you said nothing? I didn't want to cause trouble, he mumbled. I thought she had it under control. He was an enabler, a willing participant in her deception, all for the sake of a quiet life. I felt a profound sense of loneliness. In this room, Liam was my only ally. My own parents were united against me. One the perpetrator, the other the silent accomplice. It wasn't alone, I said, my voice cold again. You've been doing this for years, Mom. Small amounts here and there, hoping I wouldn't notice. Did you ever intend to pay it back? Or were you just waiting for it all to be gone? My mother stood up abruptly. I will not be interrogated in my own daughter's home. This conversation is over. You have clearly been brainwashed by him, she said, gesturing venomously at Liam. He has turned you against your own family. No, I said, standing up to face her. You did this. You lied. You stole. And you did it while telling me I was the one who was irresponsible. The hypocrisy is staggering. You will regret this, Chloe, she said, her voice low and threatening. You are tearing this family apart over a little bit of money. It was not a little bit of money, I yelled, my control finally snapping. It was my future. It was the last thing I had from Grandma, and you spent it on yourself. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out the door, slamming it behind her. My father hesitated, looked at me with a pained expression, and then scurried out after her. I sank back onto the couch, the adrenaline leaving me weak and shaky. The confrontation had been even worse than I had expected. She felt no remorse, No guilt, only anger that she had been caught. My father, the man who was supposed to protect me, had admitted he let it happen. Liam came and sat beside me, putting his arm around my shoulders. "I'm so sorry, Chloe," he said softly. "It's not your fault," I said, leaning my head against his chest. I can't believe it. I knew she was manipulative, but I never thought she was a thief. And my dad, he just let her. We sat in silence for a while, the quiet of the apartment a stark contrast to the emotional storm that had just passed through it. I knew this was far from over. My mother would now go on the offensive, painting me as the villain to the rest of the family. She would twist the story, making herself the victim of her ungrateful, greedy daughter. "She's going to tell everyone I'm lying," I said to Liam. "She's going to try to isolate me." "Let her try," he said fiercely. "We have the proof. And anyone who believes her over the actual bank statements is not someone you need in your life." He was right. But the thought of losing my entire family was terrifying. Even a toxic family is still family. Or so I had always believed. Now, I wasn't so sure. "There's one more person I need to talk to," I said. "Aunt Carol." My mother's sister had always been the black sheep of the family, precisely because she refused to play my mother's games. They had a massive falling out years ago and barely spoke. I didn't know the details, but I knew it had been ugly. Aunt Carol had always been kind to me in a distant sort of way, sending birthday cards with cash and a note that always ended with, "Don't let anyone tell you who you are." At the time, I thought it was just a quirky saying. Now, it felt like a coded message. I needed an ally who understood my mother's psychology. I needed someone who wouldn't be swayed by her tears or her rage. I needed someone who had seen her true face and wasn't afraid of it. I picked up my phone and found her number. My hand hovered over the call button. This was a big step. Reaching out to Carol was a definitive act of choosing a side. It was escalating the conflict beyond my parents. "Do you think she'll help?" Liam asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "But she's my only shot. She's the only one who ever stood up to my mother and walked away." I took a deep breath and pressed the button. The phone rang once, twice. I almost hung up, my nerve failing me. Then a voice answered. "Hello?" "Aunt Carol?" I said, my voice small. "It's Chloe." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then her voice, warmer than I expected. "Chloe, sweetheart. What a surprise. Is everything all right?" And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't entirely alone in this fight after all. "Not really," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I really need to talk to you. It's about my mom." There was another pause, shorter this time. "I've been waiting for this call for 20 years, she said. "Tell me everything." And so I did. I poured out the whole sordid story, starting with the wedding gift and the cruel card, and ending with the discovery of the drained inheritance account and the disastrous confrontation with my parents. I told her every detail, the words tumbling out of me in a rush of anger and hurt. Liam sat with me, holding my hand, his presence a silent support as I relived the betrayal. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I was terrified that I had misjudged her, that she would tell me I was overreacting, that I should just let it go for the sake of the family. But when she finally spoke, her voice was not judgmental. It was filled with a weary sadness and a steely resolve. "I'm so sorry, Chloe," she said. "I am so sorry that she did this to you. But I can't say I'm surprised." "You're not?" I asked, a little taken aback. "Honey, your mother has been pulling stunts like this her whole life," Carol said. "She sees other people's resources as her own. She always has. When we were kids, she would borrow my allowance and never pay it back. When our father died, she tried to convince me to sign over my portion of his estate to her for management. The only difference is I said no. I drew a line in the sand, and she has never forgiven me for it." Her words were a revelation. This wasn't something new. This was a lifelong pattern of behavior. I wasn't the first person she had targeted. I was just the most convenient. She told me you had a big fight over nothing, I said, remembering the vague stories my mother had told me about her dramatic, selfish sister. Carol let out a short, bitter laugh. Of course she did. In Eleanor's world, anyone who doesn't give her exactly what she wants is being dramatic and selfish. The truth is, I caught her trying to manipulate our mother into changing her will. She wanted everything. When I called her on it, she turned the whole family against me. Said I was greedy. Said I was trying to hurt our mother. It was easier for them to believe her than to confront the truth that the perfect daughter was a monster. It was like looking into a mirror of my own situation. My mother hadn't changed at all. She had just found new victims. What do I do, Carol? I asked, my voice desperate. She's going to destroy my reputation. She's going to tell everyone I'm a liar. Let her, Carol said, her voice turning sharp. Let her scream and cry and play the victim. Because this time you have something I never did. Irrefutable proof. Those bank statements are your shield and your sword. But we need more than that. To beat Eleanor, you can't just prove she's a thief. You have to dismantle the entire image she's built for herself. You have to show everyone that the generous, successful matriarch is a complete and utter fraud. How do I do that? I asked. You need to find out why she needed the money so badly, Carol explained. Your mother is obsessed with appearances. She would never steal from you just for fun. She's in some kind of trouble, I guarantee it. Financial trouble. She's been living beyond her means for decades, trying to keep up with the Joneses. Your father, bless his spineless heart, just lets her. I bet if you dig a little, you'll find she's drowning in debt. A light bulb went on in my head. The wedding. Ava's wedding had been incredibly lavish. My mother had insisted on paying for a huge portion of it, talking endlessly about how she wanted to give her daughter the fairy tale she deserved. The wedding, I said out loud. She told everyone she was helping Ava pay for the wedding. And I'm sure she did, Carol said, with your money. But I bet that's just the tip of the iceberg. Does she have credit cards? Does she own her home? Yes, I said. They've lived in the same house for 40 years. Then that's where you look, Carol said. There are public records, you know. You can check for liens or second mortgages against the property. If she's in deep, she might have leveraged the house. That would be the kind of secret she would kill to protect. The idea was brilliant. It was also terrifying. This was escalating far beyond a family dispute. This was becoming a full-blown investigation into my own mother's life. I don't even know how to do that, I said. I do, Carol said simply. I had to learn how to protect myself from her a long time ago. Give me a day. I'll make some calls. I have a friend who works in real estate. He can look up the records discreetly. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Carol, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. Just be prepared. If I find what I think I'm going to find, you're going to have a very powerful weapon. But using it will cause an explosion. You have to be ready for the fallout. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I looked at Liam. He nodded at me, his expression unwavering. He was with me no matter what. I thought about the words on that card. I thought about my father's cowardice. I thought about the years of feeling second best, of being told I was not enough. Yes, I said, my voice clear and strong. I'm sure. She's not getting away with this. Not this time. Good girl, Carol said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I'll call you tomorrow. After I hung up, the apartment felt different. It was no longer a place of despair. It was a war room. Liam and I spent the rest of the day talking, planning. We went over the bank statements again, this time not with hurt, but with cold, analytical precision. We documented everything, creating a timeline of the theft. Liam was incredible. He was logical and methodical. helping me organize my chaotic thoughts into a coherent strategy. When we confront her again, he said, it can't be an emotional outburst. It has to be a calm, factual presentation of the evidence. We present the crime, the motive, and the consequences. No room for her to twist the narrative. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. I knew my mother was already at work, calling relatives, spinning her web of lies. I could almost hear her tearful voice telling my aunts and uncles how her difficult daughter, Chloe, was making these wild accusations just to get attention, how I was jealous of Ava's perfect wedding. And sure enough, the calls started coming in. My Uncle Robert called, his tone disappointed. Chloe, your mother is heartbroken. I think you owe her an apology. I didn't argue. I just said, Uncle Robert, there are things you don't know. I will be sharing the full story with the family very soon. I hope you'll listen with an open mind when I do. He huffed, clearly not satisfied, but I didn't care. I was sticking to the plan. Don't engage. Don't defend. Just wait. Finally, the next afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered it, and it was Carol. I've got it, she said, her voice tight with excitement. And it's even worse than I thought. My heart started to pound. What did you find? She didn't just take out a second mortgage, Carol said. She took one out 5 years ago and has been struggling to make the payments. Then, 6 months ago, she took out a third mortgage. A high-interest, short-term loan. The kind you only take when you are absolutely desperate. The house is leveraged to the hilt. She barely has any equity left in it. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with sickening clarity. The steady draining of my inheritance account wasn't just for luxuries. It was to service her massive debt. The big withdrawals for the wedding and the watch were acts of sheer desperation, attempts to maintain the facade of wealth while she was financially collapsing. But that's not all, Carol continued, her voice grim. My friend did a little more digging. She has over $50,000 in credit card debt spread across 6 different cards. She's been making only the minimum payments for years. Chloe, she's not just in debt. She's on the verge of bankruptcy. She is completely, utterly broke. I sat down, stunned. My mother, the woman who lectured me about financial responsibility, who criticized my modest apartment and my refusal to accept her help, was a fraud. Her entire life was a lie, propped up by stolen money and crippling debt. The wedding was the final nail in the coffin, Carol said. She couldn't bear the thought of not looking like the perfect, generous mother of the bride. So she doubled down, stole the last of your money, and put herself in an impossible position. Now I understood the cruelty of the gift. It wasn't just an insult. It was a projection of her own failures. She called me a financial risk while she was the one who was drowning. She told Liam to guide me because she had lost all control of her own life. It was a desperate, pathetic attempt to feel powerful when she was at her most vulnerable. Carol, this is everything, I breathed. This is the leverage. Yes, it is, she said. But it's a nuclear bomb, Chloe. Once you use it, there's no going back. The family will be blown apart. Are you ready for that? I thought for a long moment. Was I ready to destroy my family to save myself? The question was absurd. My family was already broken. My mother had broken it long ago with her lies, her favoritism, her theft. I wasn't destroying anything. I was just turning on the lights so everyone could see the rot that had been festering in the dark for years. Yes, I said. I'm ready. What's the plan? The plan is a public forum, Carol said. You can't do this one-on-one. She will just lie and manipulate. You need witnesses. You need to present your case in front of the people whose opinions she cares about most. An idea began to form in my head. A perfect, terrible idea. The post-wedding brunch, I said. It's tomorrow, at my parents' house. The whole immediate family will be there. Ava and her new husband, my parents, my grandparents, my key aunts and uncles. There was a silence on the line, and then Carol let out a low whistle. At her own house, the scene of the crime. That's bold, Chloe. I like it. It's the perfect stage. Will you be there? I asked. I need you there. I wouldn't miss it for the world, she said. I'll be your backup, but this is your show. You have to be the one to do it. I will, I said, a cold determination settling over me. I'm not scared of her anymore. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, going over the plan in my head again and again. I had all the pieces, the bank statements proving the theft, the cruel card proving the malice, and now the financial records proving the desperate motive. My mother had built her life on a carefully constructed image of perfection. Tomorrow, I was going to take a hammer to it. The next morning, Liam and I got dressed for the brunch. I chose a simple, conservative dress. I wanted to look calm, rational, and completely in control. I gathered my evidence into a neat portfolio: the printed bank statements, a copy of the watch receipt, a photo of the card, and the property and credit reports Carol had sent me. Each page was a nail for my mother's coffin. Liam drove us to my parents' house. As we pulled into the familiar driveway, I felt a pang of sadness. I had grown up in this house. It held memories of scraped knees and birthday parties and Christmas mornings. Now it felt like enemy territory. Ready? Liam asked, taking my hand. Ready, I said, my voice firm. We walked in. The house was filled with the low hum of conversation and the smell of coffee and pastries. Everyone was there, just as I had anticipated. Ava looked happy, flushed with newlywed bliss. My father was hovering anxiously by the buffet table. And my mother was in the center of it all, of course, holding court, laughing, playing the part of the gracious hostess. She saw me and her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She had clearly been telling her side of the story. I could feel the coolness in the air from some of my relatives, the way they avoided my gaze. They had already judged me. Aunt Carol arrived a few minutes after we did. She gave me a subtle nod from across the room. Her presence was a quiet reassurance. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait for my moment. It came about an hour later. My father, wanting to smooth over the unspoken tension in the room, tapped his glass for a toast. I just wanted to say, he began, his voice a little shaky, how wonderful it is to have the whole family together, to celebrate Ava and Mark, and to welcome Mark to our family. Family is the most important thing. My mother beamed beside him, raising her glass. This was it. This was my cue. After he finished and people had taken a sip of their champagne, I stood up. A hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to me. I'd like to say something as well, I said, my voice clear and steady, carrying across the room. I looked at my mother, whose smile had vanished, replaced by a look of wary fury. First, I want to congratulate Ava and Mark. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness. I smiled at my sister, and she smiled back, though her expression was confused. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank my mother, I continued, turning my gaze back to Eleanor. I wanted to thank her for the incredibly generous wedding gift she gave to my husband, Liam. My mother's posture relaxed slightly. She probably thought I was about to offer a public apology to fall back in line. The other relatives looked relieved. It was so generous, I said, letting the words hang in the air. A beautiful vintage watch. She told Liam it was for the son she's getting. A welcome to the family. I paused, letting everyone absorb the backhanded nature of the comment. It was so generous, in fact, I went on, my voice hardening slightly, that I was curious about how she paid for it. So I checked the joint savings account she manages for me, the one my grandmother left to me. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. My father went pale. Ava's smile faded. My mother's face was a mask of stone. And I made a very interesting discovery, I said, opening the portfolio I had placed on the table beside me. It seems this very expensive gift was purchased with my inheritance money. My mother stole my money to buy a gift for my husband. A collective gasp went through the room. My Uncle Robert sputtered, Chloe, that's a terrible accusation. It's not an accusation, I said, holding up the bank statement with the jeweler's withdrawal highlighted. It's a fact. Here is the transaction. And here, I held up the receipt, is the receipt from the jeweler for the exact same amount paid from my account. I didn't stop there. But that was just the beginning. I also discovered that my mother has been systematically draining my inheritance for the past 3 years, spending it on clothes, restaurants, and who knows what else, all while sending me fake statements to cover her tracks. I passed the statements around the table. My relatives looked at them, their expressions turning from disbelief to shock. My mother finally found her voice. "She's lying," she shrieked, her voice high and shrill. "She's always been a liar. She's jealous of her sister's happiness and she's trying to ruin it." "Am I lying about this too?" I asked, holding up the photo of the card. I read it aloud for the entire room to hear. "I hope you can be a good influence on Chloe. She has always been a challenge. I have my doubts." Does that sound like a loving mother? Or does that sound like someone who resents her own daughter? The room was silent, except for my mother's heavy breathing. She looked trapped, her eyes darting around at the faces of her family, looking for an ally. "You might all be wondering why," I said, pressing my advantage. "Why would a woman who seems to have everything need to steal from her own child?" I wondered that too. So I did some research. This was the final blow. I held up the property records. It turns out my mother is not who she pretends to be. She and my father are in catastrophic debt. They have 3 mortgages on this house. They are on the verge of foreclosure. I then held up the credit report. And she has over $50,000 in credit card debt. She's broke. She has been living a lie for years, a lie funded by my inheritance. My mother made a choked sound, a strangled sob of pure rage and humiliation. "You stole my future to pay for your past," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but every word was clear. "You criticized my life choices while your own life was falling apart. You tried to poison my marriage because you were miserable in your own." Ava was openly crying now, her face buried in her new husband's shoulder. My father was staring at the floor, a broken man. My grandparents looked utterly horrified. "This is a family matter," my mother finally screamed. "You have no right to air our dirty laundry like this." "I have every right," I said, my voice ringing with a strength I never knew I possessed. "You made it my business when you stole from me. You made it the family's business when you used that money to build a throne of lies." I looked around at my family. I am not telling you this to be cruel. I am telling you this because I am done. I am done being the family scapegoat. I am done being the difficult one. The truth is, my mother is a thief and a liar, and my father enabled her every step of the way. Then I delivered my ultimatum. I looked directly at my mother, whose face was blotchy and streaked with tears of fury. "You have 2 choices," I said, my voice cold as ice. "Choice 1, you pay back every single cent you stole from me with interest. You will sell whatever you have to. You will get a job. I don't care how you do it. You will transfer the full amount into an account of my choosing within 90 days. And if I don't?" She sneered, trying to regain some semblance of control. "Choice 2, I said, "is that I walk out of this house, drive straight to the police station, and file a report for felony theft and fraud. I will give them these bank statements, the receipt, and your forged documents. I will press charges. And you will trade this lovely house for a jail cell." The threat hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The color drained from her face. She knew I had her. She knew I would do it. "And one more thing," I added. "You will give Liam a full public apology, right here, right now, for the insult you delivered in that card." All eyes were on her. The perfect matriarch was exposed, stripped of her dignity, her secrets laid bare for all to see. The power had shifted completely. She was no longer in control. I was. She looked at me. Her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. She had lost, and she knew it. "I'm waiting," I said softly. The silence stretched on, thick with tension. My mother stood frozen, her world crumbling around her. Her carefully crafted image, the one she had spent a lifetime building, had been shattered in a matter of minutes. She looked around at the faces of her family, but for the first time she found no support, no sympathy. All she saw was shock, disappointment, and disgust. My father wouldn't meet her eyes. My sister was being comforted by her new husband, looking at her mother as if she were a stranger. My grandparents, the patriarch and matriarch of the family, looked deeply ashamed. Aunt Carol, standing near the back of the room, had an expression of grim satisfaction. This was the vindication she had been denied for decades. Finally, my mother's shoulders slumped in defeat. The fight went out of her. She turned to Liam, her face a contorted mask of humiliation. "Liam," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I am sorry. The card was inappropriate. I apologize." It was clear every word was like swallowing broken glass for her. "Thank you, Eleanor," Liam said, his voice calm and even. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. Her defeat was absolute. "And the money?" I prompted, my voice relentless. "What is your choice?" She shot me a look of pure venom, but her will was broken. "I will pay you back," she choked out. "I will pay it all back." "Good," I said. I closed my portfolio. My work here was done. "We'll be in touch with the payment details." I turned to Liam. "Let's go." We walked toward the door, the family parting before us like the Red Sea. No one said a word. As I passed my sister, I paused. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "I'm so sorry, Chloe," she whispered. "I never knew." "I know," I said softly. "This isn't your fault. Go and enjoy your honeymoon. We'll talk when you get back." She nodded, a silent promise to reconnect, to rebuild our sisterhood on a foundation of truth instead of lies. Then I walked out of that house and I did not look back. The moment the front door clicked shut behind us, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for my entire life. The weight that had been on my shoulders for 28 years was gone. I felt light. I felt free. In the days and weeks that followed, the fallout was exactly as I had predicted. The family fractured. My mother became a pariah. My grandparents, horrified by her actions, stepped in to help my father salvage their finances, but they made it clear their relationship with their daughter was irreparably damaged. My aunts and uncles, faced with undeniable proof, distanced themselves from her. Her social circle, once her source of pride and validation, dwindled as whispers of her disgrace spread. My father called me once, a week after the brunch. He sounded like an old man. "Chloe," he said, his voice heavy with regret. I am so sorry. I failed you. As a father, I failed you." "Yes, you did," I said. There was no anger left in my voice, only a sad finality. "You chose her lies over your daughter's well-being. You chose peace over protection. I hope it was worth it." "I know I can't fix it," he said. "But I want to try. I want us to still be a family." "I don't know what that means anymore, Dad," I told him honestly. "You have a lot of work to do on your own before you can even think about fixing things with me. For now, I need space." I ended the call, knowing that while I might forgive him one day, our relationship would never be the same. He had shown me who he was, a man who would stand by and watch his child be harmed rather than risk his own comfort. My mother never called. She communicated only through my father, arranging the logistics of the repayment. The first payment arrived exactly 2 weeks after the confrontation. It was a cashier's check for a significant amount. With it was a short, curt note from my father explaining that they had sold the vintage watch, along with most of my mother's jewelry. More checks followed, each one a painful piece of her dismantled life. They sold their second car. They canceled their country club membership. My father told me, in another strained phone call, that my mother had taken a job as a receptionist at a dental office. The image of my proud, status obsessed mother answering phones and scheduling appointments was a more potent form of justice than any jail sentence could have been. She had lost the one thing she truly cared about: her image. My sister Ava called me from her honeymoon. We talked for over an hour. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had. She apologized for being blind to our mother's favoritism, for unknowingly participating in it. "I always knew she treated you differently," Ava admitted, her voice full of shame. "But I told myself it was just because you were stronger, more independent. I never realized she was actively punishing you for it. I'm so sorry, Chloe." "It's not your fault," I told her, and I meant it. We were both trapped in her game, just playing different roles: the golden child and the scapegoat. Now, we can just be sisters. Our relationship began to heal. When she returned, we started meeting for coffee, just the two of us. We were building something new and real, something that wasn't defined by our mother's warped view of us. Aunt Carol became a fixture in my life. We had dinner once a week. She told me stories about my mother's childhood, filling in the gaps and helping me understand the deep-seated insecurity that drove her to be so cruel. She was always so afraid of not being the best, the prettiest, the most loved. Carol told me one evening, "When you came along, so fiery and independent, not needing her in the way Ava did, I think you terrified her. You reflected all the things she wasn't." It didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped me to let go of the last vestiges of my anger. I no longer saw her as a powerful, malevolent force. I saw her for what she was: a weak, deeply unhappy woman who tried to build herself up by tearing others down. 6 months after the wedding, the final payment arrived. Every last cent of my inheritance, plus a calculated amount for interest, was returned. The debt was settled. I transferred the money into a new account in my name only. Liam and I started looking at houses, our future now securely in our own hands. The last I heard, my parents were selling their house. They couldn't afford it anymore. They were downsizing to a small condo in a less fashionable part of town. My mother had lost her home, her status, and the respect of her entire family. She had paid for her betrayal in the currency she understood best: public humiliation and social decline. One evening, Liam and I were sitting on the couch in our apartment, looking at real estate listings. "Do you ever feel guilty?" I asked him quietly. "About how it all went down?" He put his arm around me and pulled me close. "I feel sad that you had to go through it," he said. "I feel sad that your mother is the person she is, but I do not feel 1 ounce of guilt. You didn't destroy your family, Chloe. You saved yourself from it. You stood up and spoke the truth. That's not something to feel guilty about. That's something to be proud of." I leaned my head on his shoulder, a profound sense of peace settling over me. He was right. I hadn't started the war, but I had finished it. I had fought for my own worth, for my own future, and I had won. The wounds were still there, faint scars that would likely never disappear completely. But they no longer ached. They were just a reminder of a battle I had survived, a reminder that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from the people who are determined to break you. I looked at the final bank statement on my laptop screen, the full amount of my inheritance finally safe and sound under my own name. My mother had wanted to give my husband a gift that would remind him of the standard our family expects. In the end, she had. She had taught us both a valuable lesson about the true cost of lies and the liberating power of the truth. She finally learned what it cost to be so generous with other people's money, and I had finally learned what it felt like to be free.